So I'm here on the day 2 of Tech Week with Tobias Renk, the Global Service Owner of Advanced Pricing at BP. It's a bit of a mouthful. Tobias, if you wouldn't mind just starting by telling me a little bit about your role.
Okay. So as the Global Service Owner of Advanced Pricing for BP, the role primarily is to provide the IT infrastructure and the technology that is required in order to first gather the data that is required in order to calculate a competitive price for our fuel offer, and then finally to make sure that it is sent and transmitted to our retail network. And that in Germany, for instance, is up to 2,500 sites where we have to meet the market regulations. So it's a lot of data that is produced, and you have to be really quick, and that's quite interesting from a technical viewpoint.
Excellent. Now, you're talking a little bit later on, and your title of your presentation is The Dilemma of Innovation and Why Innovation Must Take Place in Management. Can you tell me a little bit more about the dilemma of innovation?
Certainly. So, when I talk to people, what they tell me very often is about you have to be innovative and you have to create new products and you have to improve your processes. And that's all correct. But the reality is that this is actually not going as far as it should be in order to really gain a competitive advantage. Because what happens basically is you create a new product, you have a competitive advantage over 1-2 years, and then all your competitors are just rebuilding what you did, more or less. So you're not really well advanced compared to your competition. But when you manage to create a completely new management system in your company, and we all know how difficult it is to really drive transformation forward in a company, especially when it's a big corporation, then obviously the competitive advantage that you gain is just valid for a way longer period of time, because it will take 5, maybe 10 years until other companies are really catching up with what you've done. And we see that good examples outside are like Spotify or Google with all their fancy tribe stuff and squad stuff that a lot of big corporations are trying to rebuild now or adapt to their needs. And a lot of those companies are still way behind. And eventually what that results in is they are also not as innovative as they could be with regards to creating new products. So they're basically making step number 2 before step number 1, and that's kind of the dilemma we're in these days.
Okay, and when you say that innovation must take place in management, does this mean that innovation can't take place lower down the hierarchy, assistants, so on and so forth?
Okay, so by far not. By far not. What I mean by that is the management itself needs to change. So the way that management sees itself and accepts the role that it has. So the role is not to, be high up into the hierarchy and try to preserve the role that they currently have and make a lot of money. The role is actually create an environment where my people can flourish, they can grow, they are empowered, they are happy to take on responsibility, they focus on what they think is interesting and brings the company forward. And they do it because they just want to do it. It's not because management tells them, you go this way. Because the reality is you just cannot force innovation. You cannot go to like a bunch of people, put them in a room and say, you guys, innovative, new product in 2 days. That's just not how it works. It just happens. And you have to create the environment to just allow it to happen by chance.
Excellent. And before I go on to asking you about how we can create that environment,
yes.
Why do you think this aspect or this problem of innovation has been overlooked by so many companies?
It firstly has been overlooked because, as I said earlier, the focus when you think about innovation is about, everyone thinks about the iPhone, right? And thinks, oh, we need something like the iPhone, so we need a product. And then when you start that journey, you find out it's actually quite difficult to build something like an iPhone if you are not doing your homework properly. And then you come to this management bit that I mentioned earlier. And what then happens very often is people do some research, they see this kind of Spotify stuff, and the next thing is, oh, this will not work for us because of X, Y, Z. So you're not courageous and you're not brave enough because it is painful, because it takes a lot of time. because sometimes you don't really see the results immediately. You probably see them after 2-3 years. The change that Microsoft went through after Satya Nadella became CEO took them 4 to 5 years to bring them where they are now, and now they are actually seen as a real competitive company that is innovation. And so I think it has been overseen in the past. A lot of companies recognize it now. They realize it's important, but they're probably trying, but not hard enough, because it's painful and takes time.
And for those companies that are looking to evolve and adapt and create the conditions that you speak of, how do they go about creating this system of innovation?
So let me just tell you a quick story about a woman that I really admire, because she's just amazing with regards to what she's thinking. Her name is Mary Parker Follett, right? She was born in Quincy, Massachusetts, and she's a real good thinking about management and how you can become an innovative company and what you need to do. So she came up with a number of steps that you should follow. So and just a few examples. So one step is, if you're in a powerful position, it's not to prevent your powerful position, it's to actually influence others to become more powerful. So that's one thing. So you're there to make those around you better and not just to prevent your position. And you can do that in various ways, right? Decision making is a good example. So if you always do it the hierarchical way and you don't do it based on data and the best ideas win, then obviously that kills the spirit of your team, right? It's like this, and you've destroyed a complete year of good work potentially. If you do decision making on a kind of a win-lose situation, what it basically means is everyone loses, right? Long term. So that's something you should avoid as well. So make people part of the decision making process and make them really, really heard, and do it based on data and not on kind of gut feeling, because that kills the spirit. And what I think is also very good advice that she gives is, a big corporation, if you really want to be quick, if you want to be in a position to adapt rapidly to changing environments and really become an innovative company, you don't have to be a big corporation. You have to be the sum of various small local companies, more or less, or divisions. And that's what we see these days with all those good companies that we think are kind of where we want to go to. And the most interesting thing about this story is that this lady was born in 1868. So that's quite a while ago. And what we see today is that basically most of the companies that are run today on this old kind of Taylorism foundations that have been created 100 years ago. And it's about time to change that, because we see it's working the other way, and that's actually where we need to go to these days to really be competitive.